They mocked her, shoved her, laughed while she hit the floor. A group of racist inmates humiliated an elderly black lunch lady right in the middle of the prison cafeteria, while the guards just watched. They thought she was weak, powerless, disposable, but what none of them knew was that she wasn't a lunch lady at all. She was the new warden, and every cruel word, every shove, every stolen glance, she remembered it all, because she came undercover with one mission: to uncover the evil rotting this place from the inside. But now that she knows the truth, what she does next won't just shake the prison, it'll expose the very people paid to keep others safe. And the ones who hurt her, they're about to learn what true justice looks like, served hot. The prison walls cast long shadows in the pre-dawn light as staff gathered for morning briefing. Nervous whispers bounced off concrete walls about the new warden's arrival. Officer Jenkins shook his head, muttering to his partner, "Place is ready to blow. These racial cliques get worse every day." "Yeah, and the kitchen's part of the problem," his partner replied. "Some inmates eat like kings while others get scraps. Guards just look away." Through the service entrance, an elderly black woman walked slowly, her grey hair peeking out beneath a simple cloth head covering. She carried herself with a slight stoop, but her eyes were bright and alert. A worn badge identified her as May Wilson, kitchen staff. The security checkpoint guard barely glanced at her paperwork. "Temporary kitchen position, huh? Good luck with that crowd," he said with a hint of pity. May smiled gently. "Thank you, honey, the Lord provides." She pulled a hairnet from her pocket as she made her way to the cafeteria. The kitchen supervisor, Mr. Peterson, jumped at every noise, his hands shaking as he showed May the serving station. Just keep your head down, don't engage more than necessary," he advised nervously. May took in the cafeteria as she set up for breakfast. The large room was divided like a map of territories. White inmates claimed the tables nearest the windows. Black inmates gathered in the far corner. Hispanic inmates stayed close to the kitchen line. Everyone's eyes darted around, watching, assessing. As the breakfast line formed, May noticed the subtle dance of power. A heavily tattooed white inmate nodded at one of the guards, who conveniently turned away as extra portions disappeared onto certain trays. When inmates from other groups tried the same, the guard's sharp eyes suddenly returned. "Good morning, honey," May said warmly to each person she served, regardless of their appearance or attitude. Some inmates blinked in surprise. Others sneered or made crude comments. "Shut up, mammy," one young white inmate spat. His friends snickered, but May noticed how his eyes didn't quite meet hers. Through it all, she observed one particular inmate, older, white-haired, with military straight posture despite his years. He sat alone, eating methodically, while his eyes tracked everything. A faded tattoo on his forearm marked him as a veteran. When their gazes briefly met, he gave her the slightest nod of acknowledgement before returning to his careful watch. As morning wore on, May's muscles ached from serving, but her mind stayed sharp. She noted which inmates controlled the cleaning assignments, who got first picks at the fresh fruit, which tables required permission to be used. The cafeteria wasn't just a place to eat. It was the prison's true seat of power. Near 11, as lunch preparations began, she felt the weight of hostile stares. The tattooed ringleader she'd noticed earlier lounged against a wall with his crew, watching her with cold calculation. Their eyes followed her every move as she stacked empty breakfast trays. May's hands remained steady, but her instincts, honed by years of experience she couldn't reveal, told her lunch would bring trouble. The veteran inmate noticed too, his shoulders tensed as he cleared his tray, his eyes flickering between May and the threatening group. The morning sun now streamed through barred windows, but the warmth didn't reach the cold knot forming in May's stomach. As she wiped down serving stations, she could feel the tension building like storm clouds. The cafeteria's unwritten rules were clear, and she had somehow broken them simply by existing, by showing simple kindness without checking who deserved it first. The lunch lady stood at the serving station, her weathered hands clasped together over the steam table. Her lips moved in silent prayer as wisps of vapor rose around her face. The stainless steel ladle felt cool and heavy in her grip. Not quite a shield, but it would have to do. "Lord, give me strength," she whispered, hearing the growing rumble of inmates filing in for lunch. The cafeteria doors swung open. Men streamed in, their orange jumpsuits bright against the dull grey walls. She noticed them right away. The group of white inmates who'd been eyeing her all morning, led by a tall man with a snake tattoo curling up his neck. "Well, if it ain't Aunt Jemima herself," Snake Tattoo sneered, loud enough for others to hear. A few nervous chuckles rippled through the line. She kept her eyes down, focused on serving. "Scoop plop next tray, scoop plop next tray." Her mother had always said dignity was something no one could take unless you gave it away. An accidental shoulder bump made her stumble. Mashed potatoes splattered across her apron. "Oops," someone said. More laughter. Near the wall, she noticed the older veteran inmate, the quiet one who'd caught her attention earlier, slowly making his way closer. His face was carefully blank, but his eyes were alert. Snake Tattoo swaggered back through the line. "Hey, Grandma, I need more meat." He thrust his tray at her chest, making her step backward. "There's a fair portion for everyone," she said softly, standing her ground. His eyes narrowed. "What did you say to me?" Two guards stood by the door, watching but not moving. Their faces showed discomfort but no intention to step in. It happened fast. A hard shove sent her against the steam table. Her hip struck metal as food trays clattered to the floor. The sound echoed through the suddenly quiet cafeteria. "Clean it up," Snake Tattoo commanded, grinning at his friends. She steadied herself, ignoring the ache in her side. Carefully, she began picking up the scattered trays. Her hands didn't shake. She wouldn't give them that satisfaction. A young black inmate from another table stepped forward to help, but Snake Tattoo's glare stopped him cold. The veteran inmate had moved even closer now, his presence like a warning. Snake Tattoo noticed too, some of his swagger dimming. She straightened up and returned to her position. There was still a long line of hungry men waiting. Taking a deep breath, she picked up her ladle. "Next, please," she called out clearly. A thin young man approached, not part of any obvious group. His hands trembled slightly as he held out his tray. She gave him an extra piece of cornbread with a gentle smile. "There, you go, honey." Snake Tattoo's face darkened with rage. "Playing favorites now, you better watch yourself, old woman." The threat hung heavy in the air as lunch service finally wound down. She maintained her composure until she could slip away to the supply closet. Only then did she let out a shaky breath, dabbing at her eyes with a paper towel. "Lord," she prayed softly in the dim space, "give me wisdom to help these men. Give me courage to face what's coming. And Lord, help me remember they're all your children too, even the ones who hate me." Hours later, in a quiet office after the evening shift change, she carefully removed the grey wig and wire-rimmed glasses. Her actual hair was styled short and neat, her posture now straight and commanding. Gone was any trace of a stoop or hesitation. Chaplain Roberts sat across from her desk, his kind face serious in the lamplight. "I need to tell someone I can trust," she said. "I'm not just a lunch lady, I'm the new warden, and what I saw today confirms my worst fears about what's happening in that cafeteria." The chaplain nodded slowly. "I wondered when you'd arrive, but I never expected—" He gestured at the wig. "I had to see the truth for myself, and now I know there's something bigger brewing. I overheard them planning some kind of incident, something to spark a riot. They're using racial tension to cover up contraband operations." "You could stop it now," the chaplain said. "Reveal yourself, crack down hard." She shook her head. "No. I need to stay undercover until I know exactly who's involved, including which staff members are looking the other way. Will you help me?" "Of course, Warden." He paused. "But it's dangerous. If they find out—" "They won't," she said firmly. "Not until I'm ready. For now, I'm just the new lunch lady who doesn't know her place, and that's exactly where I need to be." The cafeteria kitchen hummed with early morning activity as the lunch lady shuffled through the metal detector. Her grey wig was perfectly arranged, and she kept her shoulders slightly stooped. Every movement had to be just right, not too quick, not too confident. She'd spent 20 years in command, but today she had to hide it all behind a gentle smile and tired eyes. "Morning, Miss Ruby," called out the kitchen supervisor, already sweating in the steam-filled space. "Let's get these assignments sorted." She watched carefully as the supervisor handed out the day's tasks. Tommy, one of the tattooed crew members, got assigned to the easy work of bagging bread. His friend Mike scored the coveted coffee station, but Jerome, a thin, black inmate who kept to himself, was sent to scrub grease traps. The pattern was clear as sunrise. A young inmate with anxious eyes bumped into her while carrying a box of paper napkins. "Sorry, ma'am," he whispered, then added so quietly she almost missed it. "Keep your head down. Friday lunch. That's when things pop off." She fumbled with her hairnet, using the moment to study his face. He couldn't have been more than 25, and fear lived in the corners of his mouth. "Oh, don't you worry about me. Sugar," she said, her voice warm and slow like honey. "Been working kitchens longer than you've been alive. Say, when do they usually bring in the Friday deliveries?" "Around 10, he answered, then caught himself sharing information. "Just be careful." Throughout breakfast prep, she asked innocent questions that were really gathering intelligence. "My old eyes ain't what they used to be. That camera up there working. And which guard normally watches this door? I should know who to call if the freezer acts up again." Officer Mitchell, she noticed, always stood in the same spot by the serving line, a place where the security camera couldn't quite reach. Every morning, like clockwork, same position, same blank expression. When breakfast service began, she implemented her first small change. Every portion measured exactly the same, no special scoops of extra eggs sliding onto certain trays, no saved bacon for favorite inmates. It took less than 20 minutes for the pushback to start. "Hey, old lady," Tommy growled, leaning over the steam table. "You're new here, so maybe you don't understand how things work. Some folks eat better than others, that's just the order." She kept her ladle moving, steady and sure. "Lord above made all stomachs the same size," she said quietly. "1 scoop per person seems fair enough to me." The veteran inmate, she'd learned his name was Frank, was 3 people behind Tommy in line. His weathered face carried decades of prison wisdom, and when Tommy stormed off, Frank paused at her station. "Ma'am," he said softly, spooning porridge onto his tray. "Order around here isn't about what's fair, it's about who's scared of who." She nodded, understanding deep in her bones. Fear was the real currency in prison, more valuable than cigarettes or coffee packets. The morning crawled toward lunch prep, and she kept one eye on Officer Mitchell while stirring a massive pot of soup. Right on schedule, the guard moved to his usual spot. Then it happened. A quick nod exchanged with the ringleader, so subtle most would miss it. The lunch lady's fingers itched for the small notebook hidden in her pocket, but she couldn't risk writing anything down here. She'd have to remember every detail to share with the chaplain after her shift. The time, the location, the exact angle of Mitchell's head when he thought no one was watching. Tommy swaggered past her station, deliberately bumping the soup pot. "Better learn fast, Grandma," he sneered. "Some people don't do well here when they don't respect the natural order." She steadied the pot with shaking hands, not from fear, but from the effort of holding back her authority. Everything in her wanted to stand straight, lock eyes with Tommy, and remind him who really gave orders in this prison. Instead, she just smiled her lunch lady smile and kept stirring. Through the serving window, she could see the cafeteria filling up, white tables, black tables, Hispanic tables, each group watching the others like hawks. But now she saw something else too. The invisible lines of power running between Officer Mitchell's post and Tommy's crew, a web of corruption hidden behind routine and repetition. The veteran inmate, Frank, appeared at her elbow with a stack of clean trays. "Miss Ruby," he said quietly, "you seem like a decent sort. Nobody wants to see you get hurt." She patted his arm, this man who carried his own heavy story. "Sometimes decent is exactly what hurts need to heal," she answered, and went back to stirring her soup. Each turn of the ladle, another piece of evidence gathered, another thread of truth uncovered. The afternoon sun slanted through barred windows, casting long shadows across the prison's institutional green walls. Margaret, still in her lunch lady disguise, balanced a tray of wrapped cornbread as she made her way down the quiet hallway. Right on schedule, Chaplain Thomas emerged from his office, his weathered Bible tucked under one arm. "Those look mighty good, ma'am," he said loudly enough for anyone passing to hear. Then, his voice dropping to barely a whisper as they stood close, "What did you find?" Margaret arranged the cornbread while speaking softly. "Guard Martinez always stands by the west corner during morning delivery. He nods to the ringleader, Jimmy Rawlins, like clockwork." The chaplain's fingers drummed thoughtfully on his Bible. "Martinez, new transfer from county. Started 3 months ago. I need your help," Margaret continued. "Start a voluntary circle in the chapel. Call it Breaking Bread. Make it about hope, not preaching. Watch who shows up. She paused, adjusting her hairnet. More importantly, watch which staff members try to discourage it. Simple enough. Fellowship over fear. He nodded slowly. I'll post the notice tomorrow morning. Back in the kitchen, Margaret found Sarah, the kitchen supervisor, frantically checking inventory sheets. The woman's hands shook as she flipped through the pages. Something wrong, honey? Margaret asked gently. Sarah glanced around nervously before whispering, Numbers don't match. Never do. But I can't... I shouldn't... Margaret placed a steady hand on Sarah's trembling shoulder. You're scared, I understand that. She looked directly into Sarah's eyes. But sometimes being brave means doing one small thing. Could you keep a careful log for me? Every delivery, every signature? Sarah swallowed hard, then gave a tiny nod. I could do that. Starting tonight's delivery. The dish room clattered with the sounds of industrial washers and stacks of metal trays. Margaret was wiping down counters when heavy footsteps approached. It was the veteran inmate she'd noticed before, tall and grey-haired, with excellent posture despite his years. Ma'am, he said quietly, picking up a towel to help dry. Name's Frank. 20 years Marines before... He gestured vaguely at their surroundings. Just wanted to say, about yesterday, some of us don't hold with that kind of behavior. Margaret smiled warmly. Thank you, Frank, for stepping closer when you did. Sometimes just knowing someone's watching can make a difference. Learn that in the service. Stand up even when it's hard, even when you've made mistakes. His voice carried years of regret. They worked in companionable silence until the evening staff called for final cleanup. Margaret pushed the last cart towards storage, her shoes squeaking on the freshly mopped floor. As she guided the heavy cart into place, something caught her eye. A small package wrapped in black electrical tape, secured underneath a large food crate. Her heart beat faster, but she kept her movements casual, continuing to straighten items while memorizing every detail. The package sat exactly 3 crates in on the second shelf from the bottom. Officer Chen was on duty outside the door, and the loading dock camera faced away from this corner. All done in there? Chen called out. Just about? Margaret answered cheerfully, shuffling out with her ordinary lunch lady stoop. These old bones are ready for home. Behind her, the storage room held its secrets, but not for long. The cafeteria hummed with early morning energy as inmates shuffled through the breakfast line. Steam rose from the metal trays, carrying the smell of oatmeal and coffee through the air. The lunch lady stood behind the counter, ladle steady in her hand, meeting each man's eyes with the same gentle smile. Good morning, sweetheart, she said, carefully measuring out a precise portion of oatmeal for a thin Hispanic inmate. There's fresh fruit too, if you'd like some. Behind her, the supervisor wrung her hands in her apron, but stayed close, trying to mirror the lunch lady's calm. They'd agreed that morning. Every portion would be the same, no matter who came through the line. The test came quickly. Bobby Martinez, the clique's usual runner, swaggered up with 2 trays. You know how it goes, he drawled, sliding them forward. Extra for table 6. The lunch lady's smile never wavered. 1 portion per person, honey. That's all we can do today. You heard what happened yesterday? Bobby leaned in, voice dropping. That was nothing. Smart people learn quick around here. I appreciate the advice. She filled 1 bowl, exact to the measure. Next in line, please. Bobby's face darkened. He shoved the tray back, oatmeal slopping over the sides. You're making a big mistake, Grandma. From the corner of her eye, she spotted Michael, the young inmate who'd warned her yesterday, trying to shrink into himself as one of Bobby's friends knocked into him repeatedly. The lunch lady saw the fear in his eyes, the way he was one shove away from either fighting back or breaking down. Oh, Michael, she called out, her voice warm but firm. Could you help me in the kitchen for a minute? These new containers are giving me trouble. The relief on his face was painful to see as he ducked through the serving line door. She set him to sorting clean trays well away from the tension in the cafeteria. When they were alone, she asked quietly, About Friday, is there anything else I should know? Michael's hands trembled slightly as he stacked trays. It's bigger than you think, he whispered. That's all I can say. Please, just be careful. After breakfast, the lunch lady helped Sarah, the kitchen supervisor, set up the new livery log. Sarah's pen shook as she drew careful columns for dates, times, and signatures. I don't know if I can do this, Sarah admitted, voice barely audible. The lunch lady placed a steady hand over Sarah's trembling one. What you're doing matters more than you know. Sometimes the bravest thing isn't fighting, it's just telling the truth. Sarah's chin lifted slightly. She wrote the date in careful numbers at the top of the page. The afternoon dragged on, heavy with unspoken threats. While prepping for dinner, the lunch lady noticed the ceiling camera's red light was dark. She climbed on a step stool, finding the wires cleanly cut. A shadow fell across the doorway. Lieutenant Hayes stood there, thumbs hooked in his belt, watching her with cold calculation. Their eyes met in a long moment of mutual recognition, predator measuring prey, except he didn't know she was anything but prey. She climbed down slowly, favoring her hip like a woman her apparent age might. "Oh my, seems like that camera's not working," she said mildly. "Should I fill out a maintenance request?" The lieutenant's smile never reached his eyes. "Don't worry about it. Some things in here, they're better off not being recorded." He turned and walked away, boots echoing on the concrete floor. The lunch lady kept her face carefully blank. But inside, the warden was fitting another piece into the puzzle. The corruption wasn't just opportunistic. It was organized, methodical, and now it was feeling threatened enough to start eliminating witnesses. She picked up her ladle and returned to work, moving like she had all the time in the world, while her mind raced through contingency plans. The sabotaged camera proved one thing: bringing fairness to a corrupt system meant making dangerous enemies, and Friday was coming fast. The chapel's wooden pews creaked in the quiet of Wednesday evening. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a harsh glow on the dozen or so men who dared to show up for the first breaking bread circle. The lunch lady slipped in through the back door, settling onto a rear bench where shadows pooled. Up front, the veteran inmate sat ramrod straight, his weathered hands clasped tightly in his lap. Chaplain Morris stood at the simple podium, his kind face showing no judgment at the small turnout. "Welcome, brothers," he said softly. "Tonight isn't about preaching, it's about truth-telling." The lunch lady noticed how the men had automatically separated themselves, old habits dying hard. The chaplain saw it too. With gentle authority, he motioned for them to move closer, to fill in the gaps. "Let's talk about the stories we tell ourselves," he continued. "The ones that help us sleep at night, and the ones that keep us awake." Silence stretched like a rubber band. The lunch lady could feel the tension, the fear of being the first to speak. Then a big man with faded tattoos cleared his throat. "I joined up with certain folks when I got here," he said, voice rough. "Not because I wanted to, because I was scared." His massive shoulders hunched. "Tell myself it was survival. But maybe I just took the easy way." The admission hung in the air. The lunch lady watched several men shift in their seats, recognition in their eyes. A younger inmate spoke next, barely above a whisper. "My granddaughter sent me birthday cards every year, real glittery ones with butterflies." He swallowed hard. "They stopped coming last month. She's 13 now, old enough to know what her papa really is." The lunch lady's heart ached as she watched tears slip down his cheeks. No one mocked him. No one looked away. The room felt different, softer somehow, as if the harsh edges were being smoothed by each honest word. More stories emerged, about mistakes, about regret, about the weight of choices that couldn't be undone. The chaplain listened without judgment, offering nothing but presence and occasional nods of understanding. When the circle ended, the men filed out quietly, shoulders lighter despite their revelations. The lunch lady waited in the shadows, watching them go. As she finally stepped into the hallway, the veteran inmate appeared beside her. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "could I have a word?" She nodded, and they moved to a quiet corner where buzzing fluorescent lights cast uneven shadows. His face looked drawn, haunted. "I need to tell you something," he began, voice tight with shame. "Years ago, when I first got here, I ran with them. The ones who—" He gestured vaguely, unable to finish. "Not because I believed they're garbage, I was just scared." The lunch lady stood perfectly still, letting him speak. "I've tried to live different since then, tried to do right. But," his voice cracked, "some things can't be forgiven. What I was part of, the things I let happen." She studied his face, seeing the weight of years of regret. "Consequences are real," she said softly. "What we do leaves marks on our souls and on others. That's truth. He nodded, shoulders slumping. But change is just as real, she continued. Tomorrow's choices matter as much as yesterday's. Maybe more. His eyes met hers, desperate for hope. Choose courage tomorrow, she told him. That's all any of us can do, choose better than we did before. Later that night, in the silence of her temporary office, the lunch lady sat at a metal desk under a single lamp. Her pen scratched across paper as she documented everything she'd seen. Names, times, guard rotations, camera blind spots, delivery schedules. Each detail could matter. She wrote until her hand cramped, creating a precise timeline of patterns and players. The chaplain would need this at first light, another piece in the puzzle of corruption they were slowly assembling. Her pen paused over the veteran inmate's name. After a moment's thought, she added a single note. Trusted ally choosing courage. A thin grey dawn crept through the barred windows as the lunch lady made her way into the silent prison kitchen. Her sensible shoes squeaked against the freshly mopped floor. Even in her disguise, she carried herself with purpose, though she kept her movements slow and deliberate to maintain her cover. She pulled the delivery log from beneath the counter, where the kitchen supervisor had hidden it. Running her finger down the entries, she noticed something odd. Midwest Food Supply appeared every Tuesday and Thursday at 10:30, but also had random deliveries at odd hours. The same driver's signature, Milton K., showed up repeatedly. Looking for something? The voice made her jump. Lieutenant Cooper stood in the doorway, his brass badge catching the fluorescent light. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Just checking inventory, sir, she said, keeping her voice soft and slightly tremulous. Making sure we have enough for breakfast. That's thorough of you. He turned to a young guard hovering nearby. Johnson, take position by the west wall. Better sightlines there. The lunch lady's heart quickened. The west wall was exactly where the camera had its blind spot. She busied herself with the steam trays, hands steady despite the knot forming in her stomach. Everything about Friday was falling into place like pieces in a terrible puzzle. Ms. Harrison, the kitchen supervisor Rita, poked her head in. Could you help me check the storage area? Need to rotate some stock. Of course, honey. She followed Rita past the industrial refrigerators and into the back storage room. The concrete walls seemed to press in around them. I wanted to show you. Rita's voice trailed off as she pointed to the floor. There, partially hidden behind a stack of boxes, was a fresh strip of silver duct tape forming an X. Well now, the lunch lady murmured. That's an interesting way to mark where things go. Before Rita could respond, there was a clatter of metal trays hitting the floor. The young inmate, Tommy was his name, had stumbled while cleaning. As she helped him pick up the scattered trays, he leaned close. Tomorrow, he whispered, voice barely audible. When the state inspectors come for lunch, they're going to start something big. Make it look like the new warden can't control us. His hands shook. They want her gone before she changes things. The lunch lady straightened slowly, her joints protesting for real this time. Thank you for telling me, sugar, she said at normal volume. Just be more careful with those trays. The morning crawled by like molasses in January. She served eggs and toast with steady hands, all while watching the lieutenant position his men exactly where cameras couldn't see. The clique members swaggered through the line, exchanging meaningful glances. Everything was choreographed, planned to the minute. After lunch service, she made her way to the chapel, ostensibly to deliver some bread rolls for the evening prayer group. The chaplain was waiting behind the heavy wooden door. It's tomorrow, she said without preamble, her disguised voice dropping to her natural tone. During the state inspection lunch, they're going to trigger a riot, make it look like I've lost control before I can even start reforms. The chaplain's kind face creased with worry. You could reveal yourself now, put a stop to it. She shook her head. If I do that, Lieutenant Cooper and his helpers will slip away clean. The corruption will just wait for the next warden. She straightened her hairnet. I need hard evidence, times, places, names, something they can't wiggle out of. You're risking a lot, he said softly. Lives could be at stake. Lives are already at stake. Every day these men live under fear and violence. She touched the cross at her neck. Sometimes doing right means walking straight through the fire. The chaplain nodded slowly. I'll make sure I'm in the cafeteria. Tomorrow, just in case. Pray hard, she said, returning to her lunch lady voice as footsteps approached outside. These old bones could use all the help they can get. She shuffled out, passing a group of inmates heading to Bible study. The veteran among them caught her eye and gave an almost imperceptible nod. Small gestures of alliance, but tomorrow they would need more than gestures. Tomorrow would need courage and truth and probably a miracle or two. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Margaret, still in her lunch lady disguise, walked down the quiet hallway toward the staff office. Her sensible shoes made soft squeaking sounds against the freshly mopped floor. She'd waited until after dinner service when most inmates were back in their cells and the day shift was changing over. "Need to make a quick call about tomorrow's delivery," she explained to Officer Jenkins, who barely glanced up from his crossword puzzle. The familiar disinterest of the guards had stopped surprising her days ago. In the small office, she dialed a number she knew by heart. Her fingers trembled slightly as she pressed each button, aware that timing was everything now. "Sarah Peterson's office," came the crisp voice on the other end. "Sarah, it's Betty from food service at Riverside," Margaret said, using their pre-arranged code. "Just checking about tomorrow's special order for lunch." There was a pause. Then Sarah's voice dropped lower. "Go ahead. We're expecting quite a situation during lunch service. Would appreciate an unexpected quality check around 11:30. Margaret kept her tone casual, as if discussing menu items. "Understood. I'll have 2 inspectors there. Routine visit, completely unplanned." "Thank you, dear. That's all I needed." Margaret hung up, her heart beating a little faster despite her calm exterior. Back in the kitchen, she found Jimmy, a rail-thin young man from C Block, trying to look invisible near the cleaning supplies. His eyes darted nervously to the door every few seconds. Margaret had noticed him before. He never got enough to eat because he wouldn't play by the clique's rules. She reached into her pocket where she'd saved a fresh roll from dinner. "Here, honey," she said, softly, pressing it into his trembling hands. A growing boy needs his strength. Jimmy stared at the roll like it was gold. "But they said, we're not supposed to—" "You let me worry about that," Margaret said, patting his shoulder. "Go on now." From across the kitchen she felt eyes on her. Marcus, the ringleader, leaned against the wall with 2 of his crew, his arms crossed over his tattooed forearms. "Well, ain't that sweet," he drawled, loud enough to carry. "Playing grandma to the weak ones. Bet you bake cookies too, huh?" His followers laughed on cue, but Margaret caught something in Marcus's expression, a flicker of uncertainty. She'd seen it before in her decades of corrections work, the confusion of someone who only understood force-meeting genuine kindness. She just smiled and went about wiping down counters. Later, in the storage room, Susan, the kitchen supervisor, helped, her check inventory. Susan's hands shook as she showed Margaret her careful notes about the deliveries. "The numbers don't match," Susan whispered. 3 times this week, always when Lieutenant Phillips is on duty." Margaret squeezed the woman's arm. "You're doing the right thing. Keep those records safe." The evening wound down with the clatter of pots being put away. Margaret was finishing paperwork when the chaplain appeared in the doorway. His usual gentle expression was tight with worry. "Sister," he said quietly, using their cover story of shared church membership, "I thought you should know. Brother Phillips was asking about you today. Seemed very interested in your background." Margaret nodded, understanding the warning. The corrupt lieutenant was getting suspicious. As she prepared to leave for the night, she did one final check of the kitchen. The industrial-sized room was dark except for the safety lights, casting long shadows between the gleaming steel counters. She was nearly at the door when she spotted it. A folded piece of paper pushed underneath, the corner bent from haste. Her arthritis-curved fingers, part of her disguise, carefully unfolded the note. The handwriting was rushed but clear. "Friday they'll make an example of you. Don't stand alone." Margaret tucked the warning into her pocket, next to the small cross she always carried. Tomorrow would test everything: her courage, her wisdom, her faith in possibility of change. But tonight's small victories gave her hope. A hungry boy fed, a frightened woman finding her backbone, even a hardened man's moment of confusion when faced with kindness. She switched off the last light and locked up, her slightly stooped walk masking the straight spine of the warden beneath. In less than 12 hours, this cafeteria would become either a battlefield or a turning point. She'd seen both in her career. The difference often came down to preparation, timing, and the courage to stand firm when others ran. The night guard nodded as she passed. "Night, Miss Betty." "Good night, dear," she replied, her gentle lunch lady voice perfect and practiced. The warning note felt heavy in her pocket, but her step stayed steady as she walked toward the staff exit, ready to prepare for whatever tomorrow would bring. Margaret rose before dawn on Friday, her movements careful and methodical in her small apartment. She pinned the special button, outfitted with a tiny state-approved recording device, onto her plain uniform shirt, testing its angle. Years of military and corrections work had taught her the value of precise preparation. In her bathroom mirror, she adjusted her grey wig and the wire-rimmed glasses that helped complete her lunch lady disguise. The reflection showed exactly what she needed others to see, a kind-faced older woman who posed no threat. Behind that mask, her mind worked like a tactical map, reviewing every detail of the prison kitchen layout. Main entrance from the west corridor, she whispered to herself. Blind spot behind the industrial mixer, storage room door that sticks, loading dock with the broken camera. Each detail could matter today. She arrived early, nodding to the morning shift guards. The kitchen hummed with pre-breakfast activity, ovens warming, massive coffee urns gurgling. Susan, the kitchen supervisor, looked pale but determined as she checked the delivery logs she'd been quietly keeping. During the breakfast rush, Margaret watched the veteran inmate, James Miller, according to his file, efficiently clearing trays. She waited until he was alone by the dish return. "Mr. Miller," she said softly, keeping her lunch lady persona careful and sweet. "Might need some extra help on the serving line at lunch today. Would you be willing?" His weathered face showed understanding beyond her words. "Yes, Mum, I'll be there. And if things get—" She paused, choosing her words. "Noisy? Just help keep folks calm if you would." Miller nodded once, his jaw set. "I know what to do, ma'am." Later, she found a moment to speak with Tommy, the young inmate whose conscience had been weighing on him. He was mopping near the storage room, his eyes darting nervously toward the clique's usual table. "Tommy," she said, pretending to check his work. "Whatever happens at lunch, you stay back, you hear? Just watch and remember, but don't get involved." "But what if—" "No heroes today," she said firmly. "Promise me." He swallowed hard and nodded. By mid-morning, Lieutenant Phillips was making his third routine visit to the kitchen. Margaret noticed how he loomed over Susan, watching her check inventory sheets with an intimidating smile. "Everything adding up today?" he asked, his tone casual but carrying an edge. Margaret chose that moment to fumble a stack of clean trays, creating a tremendous clatter. "Oh my," she exclaimed, playing up her clumsy older woman act. "These old hands just aren't what they used to be." The lieutenant's attention shifted, his expression mixing annoyance with dismissal. Exactly what she wanted. She apologized profusely, taking extra time to gather the trays while he lost interest and left. Through the serving window, she spotted the chaplain settling into the cafeteria with his usual book and coffee. He chose a corner table with clear sightlines to both the serving line and the main seating area. Their eyes met briefly. No signal was needed. The morning crawled toward lunch. Margaret's recording device caught snippets of conversation, careful footsteps, the metallic sounds of kitchen work. She logged every detail in her mind. Which members of the clique arrived early, how they positioned themselves, the way they carried themselves with barely contained anticipation. Susan's hands trembled as she helped prep the steam tables. "Something's wrong today," she whispered. "They keep watching the clock." "Just keep doing your job," Margaret assured her. "That's all anyone needs from you right now." At 11:25, the cafeteria began filling for lunch. The familiar sounds of an institutional meal service took on a sharper edge. Metal chairs scraped across floors with more force. Voices carried an undertone of tension. Plastic trays hit tables with deliberate thuds. Marcus, the ringleader, sat with his crew at their claimed table. His manner seemed relaxed, almost bored, but Margaret recognized the coiled energy in his posture. As she watched through the serving window, he stretched casually, his right hand dropping to his side with a subtle flick of his fingers. Immediately, though nothing seemed to change, everything changed. His crew members shifted slightly in their seats. 2 inmates by the water. Fountain straightened. Another near the condiment station touched his pocket. Margaret felt the weight of the recording device against her chest as she took her place behind the steam tables. The trap was set, but not just for her. She'd spent decades learning to read a room, to see the patterns of power and violence. Now she stood in the center of one, armed with nothing but truth and preparation. She glanced at her allies. Miller by the dish. Return. Tommy safely in the back. The chaplain with his coffee, Susan managing to keep her hands steady as she arranged the serving spoons. 2 state inspectors would arrive soon, though no one else knew that. The serving line would open in 3 minutes. Margaret adjusted her hairnet, shifted her orthopedic shoes, and kept her lunch lady smile gentle and vacant. Let them think she was oblivious. Let them think she was alone. The clock ticked toward 11:30 as the cafeteria filled with restless energy. Through the serving window, she watched Marcus make one more casual gesture, a simple hand motion that would look like nothing to the guards, but carried clear meaning to his crew. Margaret took a deep breath and picked up her serving spoon. The trap was about to spring, but she wasn't the prey they thought she was. She had evidence, witnesses, and backup in place. Now she just had to play her role perfectly for a little while longer. The serving line was about to open. The cafeteria hummed with dangerous energy as Friday's lunch period began. Metal trays clattered against tables, voices rose and fell in practiced patterns, and inmates moved like chess pieces finding their positions. The lunch lady's hands stayed steady as she gripped her serving spoon, watching the ringleader's crew gather near the drink station. It started small. A bump, a spilled milk carton, muttered words that sparked like matches. Then came the shove that sent an inmate stumbling into the serving line. Bodies surged forward in a choreographed dance of violence. The ringleader's crew zeroed in on the lunch lady, their faces twisted with cruel anticipation. "Time to learn your place for good, Grandma," one sneered, reaching for her hairnet. But before they could touch her, the veteran inmate stepped between them. His weathered hands weren't raised to fight, they were open, palms out. "That's enough," he said, voice firm but quiet. "We're better than this." The guards at the door shifted uncertainly, hands on their radios but not moving forward. The corrupt lieutenant watched from his post, a slight smile playing at the corner of his mouth. The lunch lady set down her serving spoon with deliberate care. Her stooped posture straightened like a flag unfurling. When she spoke, her voice carried authority that sliced through the chaos like a blade. "This facility is now in immediate lockdown." The words rang against metal and concrete. She reached up, removed the grey wig and wire-rimmed glasses. "I am your new warden. For the past week I have been serving your meals to understand the truth of what happens in this prison." Shock rippled through the room like a stone, dropped in still water. Inmates froze mid-motion, the ringleader's face drained of color. "Everything that has occurred, the violence, the favoritism, the contraband moving through my kitchen, has been documented." She touched the button on her uniform. "Including the staff members who chose to look away." The corrupt lieutenant's smile vanished. He took an unconscious step backward. "But I'm not here to shame this entire prison," she continued, her voice softening but maintaining its steel core. "I'm here to name what's broken and help fix it. Starting today, we implement fair food portions for everyone. We're launching certified kitchen training programs that lead to real jobs on release. And yes, there will be accountability for those who profit from others' fear." The veteran inmate cleared his throat. "Warden's right," he said, addressing the silent room. "I used to run with their crowd years ago, told myself I had no choice, but that was cowardice and I'm done being afraid. We all got a choice today." Near the back, the young inmate who'd tried to warn her stood straighter, hope flickering across his face like sunrise. Other inmates shifted, gazes dropping to the floor as shame and possibility wrestled in their expressions. Later that evening, the warden stood before her assembled staff in the briefing room. Her grey wig sat on the podium like evidence. "Effective immediately, we're implementing new oversight on kitchen operations, delivery logs, and camera maintenance. Anyone found connected to contraband or promoting violence will face immediate consequences." She paused, meeting eyes around the room. "But those who choose to help rebuild this place into what it should be, you have my full support." For one fragile moment, hope felt solid enough to hold. The corrupt lieutenant sat in the back row, face unreadable. The chaplain stood near the door, quiet pride in his eyes, and through the window, the cafeteria stood empty and waiting, ready for tomorrow's chance to prove that change was possible. The fluorescent lights buzzed in the empty corridors as night settled over the prison. Where hope had bloomed hours before, something darker now took root. Eyes followed the warden as she walked the halls, not with respect but with cold calculation. Lieutenant Morris stood at the officer's station, his voice carrying just loud enough. Quite a show today. Hollywood couldn't have scripted it better. A few guards chuckled, but their laughter held an edge of uncertainty. In the staff break room, whispers spread like poison. She played us all, made herself look like some kind of hero, using those inmates like props in her little drama. The words stung, but the warden kept her head high, knowing the truth of what she'd witnessed. The clique's ringleader, Marcus, paced in his cell, fury radiating from every step. His status had been damaged, his control questioned. Through the prison's invisible network, a message spread. Someone had to pay. The veteran inmate, Edward Thompson, was walking back from evening medications when it happened. The utility hallway was always dim, the cameras conveniently tilted away. 4 shadows materialized from doorways. No words were spoken. They didn't need any. The sounds were muffled but terrible. A body hitting concrete, boots connecting with flesh. Short, desperate gasps for air. Minutes later, a guard found Thompson crumpled near the utility door. Blood trickled from his nose, his eye already swelling shut. Next to his outstretched hand lay a small package wrapped in electrical tape, contraband planted with surgical precision. Medical to D-block. The call echoed through the prison's intercom system. Medical emergency. In the chapel, the chaplain sat with his head bowed. A note had been slipped under his door. Break bread somewhere else, old man. Kitchen's closed. The young inmate who'd helped warn the warden stood trembling in his cell as Marcus's right-hand man leaned close to his bars. You saw nothing. You to know nothing. Or you're next. The threat wasn't loud, it didn't need to be. Word spread through the prison like wildfire. Thompson had been caught with contraband, had resisted, had fallen. The perfect story to discredit both him and the warden who'd trusted him. The warden rushed to the infirmary, her heels clicking against the linoleum. Through the window she saw Thompson's battered face, his chest rising and falling in shallow breaths. A guard stood nearby, holding up the planted package with latex gloves. "Ma'am," the guard said, his voice carefully neutral. "We found this with him. Looks like your model inmate isn't so model after all." She stared at the package, understanding with crushing clarity what it meant. In just a few hours everything had unraveled. Her reforms, her credibility, the fragile trust she'd built, all of it balanced on a knife's edge. Thompson's eyes fluttered open, filled with pain and something worse, shame. He tried to speak but couldn't form the words. The warden wanted to tell him it wasn't his fault, that she understood, but there were too many watching eyes, too many ears hungry for more ammunition. A phone buzzed in her pocket. The State Oversight Office. They'd heard about the incident. They wanted answers about her theatrical approach to leadership. They needed to re-evaluate the situation. Standing there in the harsh infirmary lights, the warden felt the weight of her failure. She'd tried to bring light into darkness, but the darkness had fought back with everything it had. Thompson lay broken because he'd dared to stand up. The young inmate who'd helped her was now silenced by fear. The chaplain's ministry of hope was under threat. And somewhere in the prison, Lieutenant Morris was probably smiling, knowing that his corrupt system was winning. That fear was reclaiming its throne, that good intentions were no match for deeply entrenched evil. The warden touched the window separating her from Thompson, her fingers leaving marks on the glass. All her years of experience, her careful planning, her prayers for wisdom, and still, this was the result. A good man hurt, hope shattered, and the forces of corruption more emboldened than ever. This wasn't just a setback. This was a coordinated counterattack, designed to destroy everything she'd worked for. And as she stood there, watching Thompson's monitors beep steadily in the night, she knew her job, her reforms, and possibly even lives, hung in the balance. Saturday morning arrived with a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. The prison corridors buzzed with whispers, each word carrying poison about the warden who had tricked them all. Into her office, Grace Matthews sat straight-backed in her chair as a state oversight officer flipped through a manila folder. "You understand how this looks," the man said, not meeting her eyes. "Deception, even with good intentions, raises serious concerns." "I understand," Grace said quietly. Her badge and ID sat on the desk between them, not taken, but their authority now wrapped in red tape. "You're under administrative review. Limited duties." "Only?" He cleared his throat. The board needs to ensure your methods won't compromise prison stability. Grace watched him leave, then pressed her palms flat against the desk to stop them from shaking. Through her window, she could see inmates moving in controlled lines, but the usual order felt brittle now. Guards stood stiffly, uncertain whose authority to trust. She made her way to the chapel, where Chaplain Thomas was arranging hymn books with careful hands. When she closed the door, his kind eyes found hers. "I may have made everything worse," Grace admitted, her voice catching. The veteran inmate, beaten because he stood up. The young one being threatened. Even the kitchen supervisor is terrified now. She sank onto a wooden pew. "I thought revealing the truth would help, but it's just given them new weapons." The chaplain sat beside her. "Truth often hurts before it heals," he said. "Like setting a broken bone. The pain means something's finally moving back into place." He paused. "Leadership isn't about being liked. It's about staying when things get ugly." Grace nodded slowly. "But I need proof before more people get hurt." In the kitchen office, she found Sarah, the supervisor, frantically gathering papers. "I can't," Sarah whispered. "They know I kept the log. I have to destroy it." Grace gently caught her trembling hands. "That log is our evidence. Without it, nothing changes." She looked into Sarah's frightened eyes. "I'll protect you. I promise." "How can you protect anyone?" Sarah's voice cracked. "They put you under review." "Because the truth scares them," Grace said firmly. "Help me finish what we started." The walk to the infirmary felt endless. The veteran inmate lay still against white sheets, his face mottled with bruises. Grace sat beside him, fighting the ache in her chest. His eyes fluttered open. "Warden," he whispered. "I'm here." She took his hand. "I'm so sorry this happened." He squeezed her fingers weakly, then pulled something from under his pillow, a torn piece of paper. A delivery label with a repeated code and a scrawled time. "Lieutenant Cooper," he managed. "Friday nights. Back door." His eyes closed again as medication pulled him under. Grace tucked the label carefully into her pocket, her mind already sorting through possibilities. The corrupt lieutenant had gotten sloppy, thinking himself untouchable. That would be his downfall. That night, she walked through the dark cafeteria alone. Moonlight slanted across empty tables where so much had happened. She sank into a chair, remembering serving food here, watching faces, learning truths. "Lord," she whispered into the silence, "give me wisdom. Show me how to bring light without bringing more pain." As she sat there, pieces began falling into place. The kitchen pipeline, the delivery schedule, the lieutenant's predictable patterns. She didn't need dramatic confrontations or harsh punishments. She needed a careful trap, built with paperwork and patience. Grace stood, her faith steadying her spine. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but tonight she had a plan. Not built on anger or revenge, but on calculated exposure. The truth would do its own work, step by step, in the light of day. She touched the torn label in her pocket. Such a small thing to carry such weight. But small things, she'd learned, could change everything. Like a lunch lady's smile. Like an old veteran's courage. Like a young inmate's conscience whispering in the dark. The empty cafeteria felt less hollow now. Grace straightened chairs as she walked out. Igos habit from her lunch lady days that still felt right. Tomorrow would be soon enough to set things in motion. Tonight she had her purpose back, and that was enough to keep going. Dawn crept through the prison windows, painting stripes of pale light across empty corridors. Warden Margaret Thompson sat in her office, her back straight despite exhaustion, reviewing the plan one final time with State Investigator Davis. "The cameras?" she asked, tapping a blueprint spread across her desk. "Restored the blind spot coverage at 4 a.m., Davis replied. "They won't notice the new angle until it's too late." The warden nodded, her fingers trailing over the cafeteria layout. After a week of serving food with a ladle, she knew every corner intimately. And the marked crates? UV ink on the bottoms, invisible unless you know to look. Davis checked his watch. Deliveries scheduled for 2 p.m., a quiet knock interrupted them. The chaplain entered with the young inmate, Tommy Martinez, whose nervous eyes darted between the officials. "It's all right, Tommy," the warden said gently. "Have a seat." The chaplain placed a steadying hand on Tommy's shoulder as the young man sank into a chair. "I've been praying about this," the chaplain said. "We're doing the right thing." "I need you to be absolutely clear on your role," the warden told. "Tommy," Watch only. Document what you see. Do not intervene no matter what happens. Your safety comes first. Tommy's hands twisted in his lap. What if they figure out I'm helping? You'll have immediate protection, Davis assured him. We've arranged a transfer to minimum security the moment this breaks. The warden leaned forward. Tommy, you're choosing a better path. That takes real courage. A hint of pride straightened the young man's shoulders. The kitchen supervisor arrived next, clutching her delivery log like armor. Her handwriting filled pages with dates, times, and that same suspicious supplier code appearing where it shouldn't. Perfect, the warden said, carefully photocopying each page. Now we have a paper trail. As morning shift began, the warden coordinated positions through whispered conversations and subtle nods. Trusted guards were placed strategically. The chaplain would run his usual Sunday programs, maintaining normal routines while keeping watch. Breakfast service started without incident. The warden walked through the cafeteria, noting how the clique's members kept glancing at the kitchen door, their confidence built on believing they knew all the angles. Good morning, she said pleasantly to each table, serving hope alongside eggs and toast. Some inmates still wouldn't meet her eyes after her revelation as the lunch lady. Others offered tentative nods, sensing change in the air. The corrupt lieutenant made 3 passes through the kitchen during breakfast, checking corners he thought were unwatched. Each time, hidden cameras recorded his movements. Orders holding, he reported with false concern. After Friday's incident, we want to avoid any more disruptions. Of course, the warden replied mildly. Though I notice you seem especially interested in kitchen operations today. He smiled thinly. Just doing my job, Mom. By lunch, tension hummed beneath the surface calm. The ringleader's crew spread out in their usual formation. 2 by the serving line, 3 near the storage access, others watching the doors. They thought they were being subtle. Tommy worked the dish return, keeping his head down while missing nothing. The chaplain sat with a Bible study group, his presence both natural and necessary. The supervisor triple-checked incoming inventory, her hands steady now with purpose. At 1:45 p.m., the delivery truck backed up to the kitchen dock right on schedule. The warden watched through her office window as crates were unloaded, including 3 with invisible markings that would show up under UV light. The corrupt lieutenant appeared as if summoned, supervising the delivery with too much attention. He directed specific crates to certain storage spots, his movements practiced and precise. The ringleader's crew began their choreographed dance, casual movements that just happened to position them near key points. 1 by the blind spot that wasn't blind anymore, 2 creating a subtle barrier between storage and the main kitchen, others drifting towards strategic corners. What they didn't know, 4 hidden cameras now covered every angle. UV scanners would track the marked crates. Tommy documented each movement from his dish station. The supervisor's log provided dates and patterns. The chaplain witnessed it all while leading afternoon prayers. The warden stood in her office, watching multiple video feeds. Everything was in place, the trap was set. Years of corruption were about to step into the light, thinking they were still hidden in shadow. She touched the small cross at her neck, remembering the veteran inmate's bruised face in the infirmary. This wasn't about revenge, it was about truth, justice, and giving everyone, even those who had hurt others, a chance to choose better. The marked delivery shifted into position. The corrupt lieutenant hovered nearby, trying to look casual. The ringleader's crew moved like puzzle pieces, clicking into place. Multiple cameras recorded every moment, turning their perfect system into perfect evidence. The sting was live. The marked crate sat innocently among dozens of others in the dimly lit storage area. Right on schedule, footsteps echoed off the concrete floor as Lieutenant Morris strode in, his badge gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Behind him, 2 members of the clique followed with practiced casualness, including the ringleader, Danny Thompson. Through the hidden camera feed, the external investigator watched them move with the easy confidence of men who thought they were invisible. The warden stood quietly in her office, her heart steady as she waited for the perfect moment. Years of corrections work had taught her, timing was everything. Regular pickup, Lieutenant Morris announced to the kitchen supervisor, who trembled slightly but kept writing in her log. The ringleader lingered by the marked crate, his movements smooth and rehearsed. The lieutenant checked his watch, then pulled out a folded piece of paper. New instructions for Friday. Make sure everyone knows their part. His voice was low, but the restored camera caught every word. That was it. The proof they needed. The warden pressed her radio button once, signaling the team. She stepped out of her office, her footsteps measured and calm. That's far enough, Lieutenant Morris. The ringleader's hand froze halfway to the crate. The lieutenant's face tightened, then smoothed into an oily smile. Warden Johnson just conducting a routine inspection. With unauthorized written instructions? She kept her voice steady. And a package taped under that crate. You can't prove anything, the lieutenant snapped. But his eyes darted to the delivery log in the supervisor's hands. The supervisor stepped forward, her voice shaking but determined. I have every irregular delivery documented, sir. Times, dates, signatures, all of it. The ringleader's face twisted with rage and humiliation. He lunged forward but stopped short when the chaplain appeared in the doorway. Danny, the chaplain said quietly, take a minute. Just 1 minute to think. The warden pulled out a chair. You have a choice right now. Tell us the truth about Friday's planned riot and help prevent unnecessary violence, or face transfer and full charges. She paused, then added more softly. The mailroom asked me to give you this before we came down. It's from the hospital where your mother is. Danny's hands shook as he took the letter. His face crumpled as he read, the tough mask cracking to reveal something raw underneath. She's asking for me, he whispered. Says she's sorry for everything. The chaplain moved closer. Shame is heavy, son, but it doesn't have to own you. Tears filled Danny's eyes. His shoulders sagged as years of hatred seemed to drain away. The riot was supposed to happen during Friday lunch, he said hoarsely. Get everybody fighting while special deliveries came through. Lieutenant Morris has been running it for months. He looked at the warden. I'm tired, I'm just tired. Lieutenant Morris lunged for the door, but found his path blocked by state investigators. As they led him away in handcuffs, the warden touched Danny's shoulder. Thank you for choosing truth. That evening, she stood in the cafeteria before the assembled inmates. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as she addressed them directly. I owe you an explanation, she began. I came here undercover as a lunch lady because I needed to see the truth, not just about who was corrupt, but about who was trying to do right in spite of it. I apologize for the deception, but not for seeking the truth. She gestured to where the veteran inmate sat in his wheelchair, face still bruised but eyes clear. Mr. Harrison was framed. He's been officially cleared. The staff members involved in the contraband operation have been removed and will face charges. The room stayed quiet as she continued. Starting tomorrow, we begin real changes, job training, education programs, and a cafeteria where every person gets treated with basic human dignity. She looked around the room. Not because I'm soft, because dignity and accountability go hand in hand. The young inmate who'd tried to warn her managed a small smile. Across the room, Danny Thompson sat with his head bowed, the letter from his mother clutched in his hands. The supervisor stood straighter behind her counter, fear replaced by quiet pride. Change wouldn't happen overnight, but truth had finally broken through, and with it came the first real chance for hope. 2 weeks had passed since the exposure of corruption at Millbrook Correctional, and the cafeteria buzzed with a different kind of energy. Gone were the tense shoulders and fearful glances. Instead, inmates moved with purpose, some carrying paint supplies while others adjusted a cloth-covered wall. Warden Gloria Thompson stood in the doorway, taking in the scene. No wig, no stooped shoulders, just her natural grey hair and the quiet authority she'd earned. The kitchen supervisor, Mrs. Chen, approached with a clipboard. Everything's ready, Warden, Mrs. Chen said, her voice steady now. The portions are measured, and all stations are properly staffed. Thank you for staying strong through all this, Gloria replied, touching the supervisor's arm. Your delivery logs made the difference. At the serving line, Marcus, the young inmate who'd chosen conscience over fear, adjusted his new kitchen whites. Good morning, Warden, he called out, pride evident in his posture. Looking sharp, Marcus. How's the culinary certification program going? Yes, ma'am, top of the class. He grinned. Never thought I'd get excited about proper knife skills. The cafeteria doors opened again, and James Walker, the veteran inmate, entered slowly with a cane. His face still showed fading bruises, but his eyes were clear and determined. Several inmates nodded respectfully as he passed. Mr. Walker, Gloria said warmly, Good to see you up and moving. Wouldn't miss this, ma'am. He gestured to the covered wall. Some of these young men worked day and night on that mural. The chaplain, Reverend Mills, gathered everyone around. The room quieted naturally. No guards shouting for order. Shall we begin with a prayer? He asked softly. Heads bowed as he spoke. Lord, we ask for wisdom to see each other's humanity, courage to choose what's right, and hope that transforms these walls into a place of healing. Amen. Gloria stepped forward. Today marks more than just a new cafeteria mural. It represents the choice we make every morning. Will we let fear divide us, or will we build something better? She nodded to two inmates by the wall. Show us what's possible. They pulled down the cloth, revealing a stunning mural spanning 20 feet. At its center was a simple wooden table, but around it were painted faces of every color and age, breaking bread together. Above it, in careful letters, "One table." Applause broke out, genuine and warm. The artists, including some who'd once been part of the racist clique, stood awkwardly, unused to praise. This is just the beginning, Gloria continued. Starting next week, we're expanding the culinary program. Those who complete it will have job certification waiting on release. The Breaking Bread Circle continues with Reverend Mills, and we're adding family connection programs. She looked directly at faces in the crowd. I know some of you felt betrayed when I revealed my undercover role, but I needed to understand the truth to help build real change. Not just rules, transformation. It starts with daily choices. How we serve food, how we treat each other, how we handle our shame and hope. Later that afternoon, James Walker sat before a video screen for his parole hearing. Gloria stood quietly in the back of the room as he spoke. Yes, sir, he told the parole board. I made terrible choices years ago. Joined the wrong crowd inside because I was scared. But 2 weeks ago, I saw that lunch lady, our warden, getting attacked for showing simple kindness. I had a choice. Stay quiet or stand up. This time I chose right. His voice grew stronger. I'm not asking you to forget my past. I'm asking you to see that change is possible, even for an old man like me. I want to help other veterans coming home find better ways than I did. The board conferred briefly. The chairman leaned forward. Mr. Walker, considering your recent actions, improved disciplinary record and strong support network, we're granting your parole. That evening, Gloria surprised everyone by stepping behind the serving line one last time, not in disguise, but as herself. She smiled as she spooned out portions, watching the room. Where separate racial territories had once been enforced, she now saw mixed tables. Marcus taught another inmate proper food handling. The mural glowed in the sunset light streaming through barred windows. And James Walker sat with tears in his eyes, holding his parole papers, as men from every background stopped to shake his hand. Cornbread, sir? Gloria offered to the next man in line. Yes, ma'am, he replied, and those two simple words held more respect than any forced obedience ever could. The institutional radio crackled the 5-minute warning for end of dinner, but Gloria knew that tomorrow these same men would return to this room different than they'd entered it today. Not perfect, not completely healed, but choosing meal by meal to see each other's humanity across one table.